Hello, people of YouTube land, those that follow Ted and I on Twitch, and those that are part of the Cringe Crew Gaming Discord, and to those that are listening to this on Spotify and whatever audio streaming service that this is on. I am Traductus.
And I'm Ted.
And this is the Cringe Crew Gaming Movie Review Podcast, where we take a director's filmography and then we review and rank the movie. Obviously, we're still on Stanley Kubrick, and this is Barry Lyndon. Finally, kind of got to like the last half of Kubrick's movies. Took us forever, but really we did it.
Yeah, well, emphasis on forever, because God forbid we make a movie that doesn't require its own built-in intermission.
That being said, we're gonna go with background and casted, but Barry Lyndon, released in 1975, and as usual, can you believe it was a book? God, that joke's already gotten old. But yeah, based on the 1844 novel The Luck of Barry Lyndon by William Makepeace Thackeray, which I am or Thackeray, probably butchered the middle name on that, but it's okay. It'd be funny for people of Britain to make fun of me for that. See here. Released in December 18th, 1975. Had a budget of $11 million and had a box office return of $31.5 million. Barry Lyndon won 4 Oscars at the 48th Academy Awards for Best Scoring under the category Original Score and Adaptation or Scoring Adaptation. Won Best Costume Design, Best Art Direction, and Best Cinematography. Says at the time, although critics took issue with the film's slow pace and restrained emotion, its reputation, like that of many Kubrick works, has grown over time. We'll get into the pace of this movie in the next section. But anyway, we have as the voice of the narrator, Sir Michael Murray Holdern. He is best known to me and probably also to Ted as the Wise Man in Labyrinth. We have Ryan O'Neal as Redmond Barry. Oddly enough, he was an American actor, which usually, in lieu of Kubrick doing like these movies and having an American actor, they usually don't even bother putting on an accent. But Ryan O'Neal actually does an Irish accent. And fun fact, he also trained as a amateur boxer before his career in acting. We also have Marissa Berenson as Lady Lyndon. Patrick McGee, who was the author that was attacked by Alex's gang in A Clockwork Orange. He's in this as the Chevalier de Balibari, who ends up being like a friend to Barry Lyndon like halfway in the middle of the movie. We have Hardy Kruger as Captain Pottsdorf. He's the head of Barry Lyndon's army division when he's in the Prussian army. We have... Oh my god. Sorry, I'm 12 for laughing at this. Gay Hamilton as Nora Brady, who is Barry Lyndon's love interest at the beginning of the movie. Later on, the so-and-so love interest, I put that in quotation marks, is obviously Lady Lyndon, although you'll come to find out Barry Lyndon is a fucking gold digger. We have Jeffrey Quigley, who is Captain Grogan, who is Barry Lyndon's friend and the head of Barry Lyndon's division when he's in the British Army. We have Mary Keane as Belle, Barry's mother. Mary Melvin as Reverend Samuel Runt. He is an advisor to Lady Lyndon. Leon Vitale as the adult version of Lord Bullington, who is Barry Lyndon's stepson, and I'd say primary antagonist in the second half of the movie, although you could easily argue that Barry Lyndon's his own fucking antagonist. He's played by Dominic Savage in his younger years. And then we have Leonard Rossiter as Captain John Quinn. That is the person who Barry Lyndon is competing with Nora Brady with at the very beginning of the movie. And there's a long cast after that, but I think those are basically the main
I think
ones.
I think you hit the big ones. The important ones, anyway.
Yeah. Development. After completing post-production on 2001: A Space Odyssey, Kubrick resumed planning a film about Napoleon, and during pre-production, Sergei and Dina Laurinaitis' movie Waterloo. Is that the actual? Oh, that is okay. That is the Waterloo that that I know of. Okay, that movie's actually pretty good. But it ended up failing at the box office, so Kubrick reconsidered that, and not Kubrick reconsidered that. Kubrick's financiers pulled funding, and he then went towards making A Clockwork Orange. However, Kubrick at the time decided that he would adapt Thackeray's Vanity Fair, but dropped the project when a serialized version for television was produced. So eventually he's just like, you know what? I am doing this. Although he also suggested adapting Arthur Schnitzler's 1926 novel Dream Story, which would eventually be made into a movie being Eyes Wide Shut, which will be the last Kubrick film that we review. So that's basically how this got made. Basically, what am I adapting? Well, here we go. And I think that will lead us to you talking about the plot of the movie.
Okay. God, it's so fucking long. We watched this over 2 days, so let me get my shit in order. So essentially, Barry Lyndon gets in a duel. Well, he's not Barry Lyndon yet. Barry gets in a duel over this woman.
Yeah, Redmond
right?
Barry.
Or
no, Redfield, or is it?
I don't. Redmond Barry. I don't fucking know. Anyway,
yeah, Redmond.
Anyway,
okay.
Fucking Barry, he gets in his duel over this woman. The duel is staged for him to win because the guy he's dueling against is a coward, right? So he has to flee in exile. the guy that like faked his own death in this duel then marries the girl that they were fighting over, obviously, because Barry's been exiled. So then he starts this quest to go back to her, and then gets wrapped up with the army, and then double crosses and turns into a spy for fucking somebody else, and then he marries Rich, and then there's an intermission at the shittiest fucking point in time ever, and then you just watch his downfall trying to fight his fucking stepson. There's a lot going on. This plot twists and turns a million different times, and the drive and focus changes a million times more. I'm sure we're going to get into more detail for a lot of those sections. This
is probably going to be a long one because there's a lot to.
There's so much to unpack here.
Yeah.
I think we're just going to cut it into likes and dislikes, because I think that's going to be the best way to break down each section of the plot. I'm noticing now that most of my notes are negative, so if you got likes, let's start with that.
Some of mine are positive.
That's fine.
All right. I like how, and I will say this movie is definitely not for everyone. I'll get that into dislikes, especially when we get into length. But every time I watch this movie, I unpack and notice new themes with it. Like there's critiques on capitalism, or just like high society in general, or at least climbing of social ladders. Critics on etiquette of like high society or just society in general. There's a huge theme of luck throughout the entire thing. And there's a lot of details when how this plot kind of unfolds. Like with like critiques of capitalism, Barry Lyndon is only able to climb through the ranks either off of two things: sheer dumb fucking luck and taking advantage of other people. Which are basically two main huge things that are critical of capitalism, as in it's not hard work that really brings you to the top. It's either birth, you hit the lottery, or you basically screw over everybody that's helping you get to where you're at. Now, whether you think that's valid depends on your worldview, but knowing Kubrick's worldview, being a bloody communist, this thing, more or less is a huge critique on that, and also a critique on people achieving wealth, because even though Barry Lyndon isn't a morally perfect person, he becomes more of a jerk off as soon as like he is able to get like the status and has money, or at least is able to use his wife as like his personal bank.
Oh, I'd say he's corrupt right from the beginning. Like you said that he, becomes worse, but I mean, I would argue that at the very beginning of the movie, his view of things is jacked up. Like the entitlement to fight over the ability to marry his fucking cousin, dude, is literally how you get introduced to the character.
Well, I mean, I thoroughly agree, but what I'm saying is that you kind of give him the benefit of the doubt until he becomes rich, and then you're just like, no, he's just an asshole. If that makes sense.
Maybe I get, like, I don't know if you give him the benefit of the doubt or if you feel bad, because like he starts from a really shit situation. Like he has to flee away from the woman he loves. You realize that like the woman he loves actually was won over. I hate using that terminology. There's so much fucking misogyny in this movie. I hate using that term, but like his woman gets won over because of a fake duel, right? And then the dude takes all of his family's wealth in a bag so that he can flee to Dublin, and then gets robbed like 8 seconds into his trip. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And by the way, that highwayman that robs him was actually a real highwayman, like a real legendary highwayman.
I just. Like I don't know that you give him the benefit of the doubt for not being a shitty person. I think it's just that his situation sucks more. You start to feel less. Yeah, you start to feel
So you
less
feel
bad when the
bad, yeah.
dude's rich, right? Like I think he's the same shithead the whole time. You just sympathize more when the rest of his life also sucks.
I thoroughly agree on that. Um, I also noticed that when it comes to like etiquette, this movie really deconstructs like because it's always like Barry Lyndon's like, okay, so these are the rules of being a gentleman. Like he follows like the rules of being a soldier, but given the opportunity, he abandons his post as being a soldier, which you're not supposed to do. So it's like when the etiquette benefits you, he's just like, okay, I follow it, but when it no longer benefits him, he just like cuts and runs. And it seems like every other person in this uh does the same thing, as in like his cousin that he's, uh uh in love with and fights with the other dude over like she has like a, I guess, modus operandi for like courting men, and that is finding like a ribbon. And then obviously back in these times it wasn't like you courted multiple people. It was like a woman courted one man, and then say by that, and then you find out that she's courting some other dude, does the ribbon thing, and it's implied that she's done this multiple times to like multiple men throughout the entire town. So obviously, the whole formal etiquette of finding the ribbon doesn't really matter, because like she's not following the other etiquette that is, thought of at the time to be proper code. Um and when it comes to like the aristocracy trying to be like proper and having like all these uh rules and everything, like it's really just a facade in public, because like behind the scenes they're drunk, gambling, cheating on their wives, and doing everything that would be the opposite of what high society would say as proper etiquette. um Also, luck being an overall thing, mostly everything that happens uh in this movie that works positively in Barry Lyndon's case is luck. The only times that it's not really left up to luck, it ends up working against his favor, like when he has full control over a situation, if that makes sense, with the exception of well, I mean, even in some cases with the duel, but dueling's more or less like the only uh trying to think. There's Yeah, shit. We'll just say there's four duels. The two in the middle, one's a sword fight, one's like a fist fight. Um, 3 out of 4 of them, obviously, aren't really like. Well, actually, the first one I would say is kind of set up with like just luck, but the rest of it, Barry's actually like adequate at fighting. Um, but a lot of cases, like, okay, he's in the um army, needs to get out. He sees a situation where he's able to get out, and he does that twice with each. Um, he does that twice with each uh, time that he's in different armies. First, fighting for the British, and then the next fighting for the Prussians. Um, Afterwards, it's by luck that he was able to um, at a particular time that the woman that he's courting's husband dies. At least at the time that he did, it could have been just as easily that he's courting this woman, and then Barry ends up passing away before her husband ends up dying, and he could have just been just left with nothing and just been a gambler. Um, but everything else, uh, when he has full control over something, as in his wife's estate, uh over his like a wife's estate, and how he treats his stepson is basically entirely his own undoing. Also, with his decision to abandon like the British army, that's how he ends up getting wiped up in like the um Prussian army, because he runs into like a Prussian commander, and with the British army and the Prussians uh having kind of like a loose alliance against the French. Uh Obviously the Prussian captain notices that Barry Lyndon's posing as an officer, and it's like, well, you're now working for us, otherwise we're sending you to the British and you're gonna get punished. And if like pretty much if Barry Lyndon didn't just like go to the tavern and just stayed at that lady's house and then, left right afterwards instead of going to the fucking tavern, he would have been fine. But I think what's really, really interesting, which I just finally saw during this, and it comes with like his various duels and also interactions with people. When Barry is kind of pitted against someone that's of a higher social class than him, he ends up winning. Like, granted, like the duel is rigged at the beginning, but who rigs the duel? Is it the British officer that he's dueling against? No, it's his cousins that are, the brothers of his cousin that he's trying to get with. They rigged the duel, so they screw him over. But which also kind of makes me unpack that first duel a little bit. And sorry that I'm kind of going off on a tangent on this, but hey, it's the Cringe Crew Gaming Movie Review Podcast. Salman's going on a tangent. But that could have, and this is my point with like the luck with it, was the British officer's pistol rigged or not? And did he deliberately miss? This is my question to you, Ted.
Oh, I don't fucking know. I don't think it matters.
Exactly. And it really doesn't really matter, but it makes you think, like, at least it makes me think, it's like, like his cousins, set him up for, even if he succeeds, he fails. And even then, it's also showed later on that Barry would have won the duel anyway, because he shot him with like a fake bullet. So, or at least that's what his friend tells him when they run into each other in the army. Now, when he runs into his friend in the before that, when he runs into like the highwayman, they're both in the same social status. The highwayman is able to get one up on Barry. And then it goes up to when he runs into his friend, who, even though he's his commanding officer, they see each other as basically equals because they're really good friends. And then he's like, "Hey, I'll give you my part of my share of rigging that duel." And then when his friend ends up dying, he goes, "Hey, I only have this amount. I don't have the rest of it because I spent the rest of it on freaking cards." So someone that's on the same level of him screws him over again. When he's like fist fighting that British soldier is been there longer, possibly a higher rank. Barry Lyndon beats him up and wins that fight. When Barry Lyndon is posing as an officer, he's presenting himself as the same rank as the Prussian captain that catches him. So again, same level of status. Barry ends up getting screwed over on that. However, while knocked back down in status, him and the Chevalier are able to escape the Prussians and then go back to gambling, which they routinely cheat at cards and get one over on the aristocracy. And obviously some of them don't want to pay. And I think it's really interesting. You're just like, well, they have all this money. Why can't they pay? Well, you find out later through Barry's thing is that they spend money like a drunken freaking sailor and all in freaking debt. So that's why they don't want to pay and try to like, gamble on credit. But Barry Lyndon wins, various duels against the aristocracy to, pay up money on that front. And then it's the final duel with Lord Bullington, and there's a lot to really unpack with that one. I will say this. That duel at the end is probably one of my favorite scenes in any movie whatsoever. Now, I know Ted has his gripes with it, but I think that might have to... Well, there's a couple of them, like how the duel kind of ends, but but how the duel is basically set up, it is a very, very, like, intense scene. Especially since you have, like, Lord Bullington, who is nervous as fuck, because he knows that, Barry Lyndon is a, known for, winning these goddamn things. So he obviously doesn't want to get shot, but he is fighting for his own honor and also his mother's honor, who Barry Lyndon basically squandered most of her money, treats her like shit, treats Lord Bullington like shit. And by the way, this isn't saying that Lord Bullington is a good person. He's also a sniveling bastard as well. But you do feel bad for him a little bit. At least until the end of the duel. But, pretty much Lord Bullington, goes first to shoot in the duel, misfires his pistol, and is told, like, yeah, that was your shot. Now it's Mr. Lyndon's turn. And obviously Lord Bullington thinks he's going to die. He throws up in the corner. And how everything's set up, especially like the music in the background just being drummed, just going boom, 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 as if it was like seconds of like the clock just like moving, as in like seconds towards like your demise. And then Barry Lyndon shoots on the ground. And there's various reasons why Barry Lyndon does this. One, at this point, Barry Lyndon's reputation is in shambles due to the fact that he beats the shit out of his stepson in front of all the aristocracy because his stepson insulted him, and which I would probably have done the same thing, but the aristocracy was just like, yeah, this guy's an asshole. He, like, his son called him out, and then, his stepson called him out, and then instead of, taking matters privately, he broke the rules and beat the shit out of him right then and there. So he is considered to be a cruel man. Also, the treatment that he shows to his wife, especially to the point where she tries to commit suicide, and also him just squandering the entire family fortune, especially when he has his own mother running things, who only gives a shit about herself. I'd argue that she's probably like the worst character in the movie. But there's that where Barry, decides to, like, well, this would help my reputation if I, show that I'm not cruel and show him mercy. Another thing is, him leaving everything up to chance worked so far, so here's a chance of, like, maybe if I spare Bullington, he'll, like, say, hey, I received satisfaction, and maybe things will work out. Which, by the way, is obviously unlikely, and if you see, it does not work out for him with that. But another thing I would probably also say there's two other reasons why. The other one is Bullington looks very pathetic during the duel, and you kind of wonder if like Barry's just like, all right, this is just sad. Like I'm just gonna, he feels bad for him. And also another part, there's also similarities between him and Lord Bullington, as in you both feel bad for them to an extent, but they're not good people. You know what I'm saying? They're both shitheads, but seeing like the situations that they've been in, you can kind of feel bad for them at certain points. While at the same time being like, no, fuck these guys. Like literally like during the duel, for how like various points where Lord Bullington is very unlikable, I was expecting Ted to say get fucked when Bullington's pistol misfired. Which I'm surprised you didn't, Ted.
I'm closer to telling you now, Stallman. It's been 10 minutes and you literally went 100 uhs between the last time I spoke. You just... Fuck, dude. You commented almost as long as the movie. Jesus H. fucking Christ. I don't even know what the like you started with there was. My brain is fucking melted. I'm gonna move into dislikes. I'm gonna move into dislikes.
No. I'm packing the duel. There's different layers in the duel where there's various motives between each person, and then it just all comes together and it just makes you really think. Also, I think the acting in this is very well done.
Okay.
That's literally what I have for basically likes to... As you see, there's a lot of shit to unpack. I really like this movie. Ted, if you have any likes, because
you gave me the plot of the movie again. I don't even know the like you started with that led you on that tangent. I'm gonna move on.
I like that there was like several themes that I could dig up out of the movie, such as critiques on capitalism, etiquette, themes of luck, and also attention to detail, where the fact that Barry seems to win duels over people that have a higher class than him, but as soon as he's in the same class, he fucking loses. Or when he doesn't leave things to luck, with the exception of the last part of the last duel, it works out in his favor. But when he has full control over something, it totally screws him over.
I was being a shit, Stallman. I did listen through the entire 10 minutes. Fuck. Okay. No, we're gonna move to dislikes because we need to hear not your voice. All right. So the thing that first and foremost, Kubrick needs a fucking therapist. I'm tired of plots being driven by the main character really wants a woman and does some stupid shit. Also, there's like overhanded misogyny that isn't like intentional misogyny. It at this point, like, it just has to be a reflection of Kubrick. There's just so much fucking angst and so many themes with women that like they're the driving force to fucking everything in all of his, like, Kubrick needs a fucking therapist. And
not Sigmund Freud, because I would get screwed up. Really bad.
My biggest gripe with this movie is mostly that, like, there's just a massive step back from the previous two movies, right? We went from like intergalactic themes and the poignance of Clockwork Orange to like, we're leading off this movie with I want to fuck my cousin, right? Like there's just and then we go from there, right? And like, if you really take this movie as an overall whole, if you can take any like half an hour chunk of this movie and you can identify Barry's driving force, right? You understand what drives that plot forward. But to get from beginning to end, there's no consistent, this is what I want, right? Like, it's like, obviously...
Thank God for, like, the narration, because the narration gives, like, some cohesive thing. If there wasn't any narration with this...
No, it's not even no, it's not even that. It's cohesive. There's a clear line as to what happens A to B, right? But if you were to ask me like what like at the end of the movie, what got Barry here, right? And you go, I don't know. I guess he just kind of stumbled into it, didn't he? Right? Like
I think that's the point.
But no, but that's so fucking dumb, right? For the first half of the movie, the whole purpose is he's chasing after this woman. Again, Kubrick needs a fucking therapist, right? But then it's like, okay, well, now he's found somebody else, right? Like he sleeps with the woman as he escapes the British Army. Like the whole purpose of his time in the British Army is to get back to the woman that he loves, right? But then it's like, she's pretty too. Fucks her. And then to go from that point forward in the movie, you're like, all right, well, what's his driving force?
I think by the time that point, he's already like moved on because he's find out that the woman that he loves is already married.
He's still on his way back to confront them, though. Like that, it's still a driving force, right? Yeah. But then he sleeps with somebody else, and he's like, well, fuck going home. I don't need that anymore. So what's the purpose of going forward, right? He gets into the Prussian army and realizes that he can like make friends or get like become a free man instead of belonging to somebody else, right? And then he becomes free, and you're like, okay, well, what's the purpose now, right? And then he marries into to wealth, right? And you're like, okay, that's great. He feels like he's made it. He's accomplished something with his freedom. What the fuck is the point now, right? And it's like, and then it's he wants to get a title so he can feel more important. Okay, you've fucked that over, right? Now, what's the driving force now? What's your purpose now, right? Every half-hour section has its own plot line, and if you go from beginning to end, the thing that drives him in the beginning doesn't fucking matter in the slightest at the end because you've forgotten that this woman existed because it's been fucking 3.5 hours. Like, it's... While there is a lot of content that fills this movie for 3.5 hours, there's also a whole lot of like...
Kiss.
I'm just gonna let Stallman talk. He's got my list. So, all right, some other like minor gripes, right? I think that there's a lot of inconsistencies. I think that there are a lot of places that the symmetry of this movie provides discomfort in a way that makes watching difficult. So, take, for example, the duel. You know exactly how it goes, so we don't need to talk about it again. But the first duel, they're firing at the same time, right? The next fight conflict is the one where they're in the military, right? And it's a fist fight. They're both fighting at the same time, right? The physical conflicts are all happening all at the same time. It's combined effort, and like you said, there's a luck element to it to some extent. Like, sure, he's good at whatever, but like it's happening at the same time, and there's some control over his immediate fate, right? The last fight, well, all of a sudden they just kind of changed the terms, and now they fire back and forth. I get why it's important to the driving force, right? Like I understand that, like,
shit.
I get why it happens that way, but it also feels like it's totally asymmetrical. That all of a sudden it's like, well, when you change the rules, it doesn't work. But that's not the point of that at all. And I think that there are ways to fix it, right? I think that if that first duel is turn taking, right, rather than both fire at the same time, I think that the symmetry starts to match when you know the ending one has to be written that way. I think that largely you can avoid the fist fight where it's a direct fight in the military by making it a cheap shot, right? Where it's like one of them is very clearly taking a turn that the other one isn't, right? Or even just letting the punches go like back and forth where like fucking Dana White's new slap league, right? Like where they're taking turns slapping each other, right? Like even that kind of thing that you could write it up that way where it's not just simultaneous. And there's so much like dissymmetry, right? I also hate you mentioned it sort of there as a like in your soliloquy, that like you appreciated the way that he was always fighting up, right?
Yes.
I think it's really shitty that he has the ability to continue fighting up, right? In the last one with his convoluted fucking morals, right? That Barry could still be fighting up, and the idea that like he could be fighting the concept of like honor and loyalty when he fights his stepson, right? But instead he's just like, nope, I'm above you, have mercy, right? And that's what ends up taking his quality of life away, right? Like, yeah, he decides to fight down, and it takes his it literally takes his leg. If like as you go through the second half of the movie, like post intermission, there's an hour and a half that his stepson is the primary antagonist, right? Again, you could argue that it's himself, whatever. But the only like the biggest external force to Barry, right?
It's his stepson.
You could off it, and then there's no downfall. Like in the grand scheme of things, like you go from leveling off at his peak to losing a limb in like the time it takes to fire a fucking pistol. All right, if he had not given up on his shot, if he hadn't shot the ground and showed mercy, and he just shot,
he could have at least easily killed Lord Bullington, but he would also be even more of a pariah in society than he would have if he killed him. But, although he would still inherit all the money if him and his mom didn't squander it by the time his wife passed away. Even still, right? Like he's still living in a better situation than he was at the beginning of the movie, right? Like there is a downgrade from where he has been, right? But like it's a plateau enough that like the dude's still fucking rich by comparison. There's enough of a fortune to get back to his fucking stepson's family that he can get paid 500 fucking gold, which is literally 50 times his entire family's wealth at the beginning of the movie. And he gets that a month. Like, you're not living in poverty at that rate. You know what I mean? I just like there's something to be said for he could still be fighting up, right? He could instead of fighting the person, he's fighting the embodiment of honor and dignity and faithfulness and, I don't know, respecting women, because Kubrick still needs a fucking therapist, right? Well, yeah, because here's the funny thing is that he could have avoided all this if he, treated... Because the whole point of him actually trying to get the title Lord and Warner and everything is that if she dies, his stepson, who he's treated like shit and hates him, takes over everything. It would completely leave him out of it. But if he would have treated his wife with like dignity and respect, and his stepson with dignity and respect, the situation would have never have happened. Right, and so as you say, like that, he's the luck plays into it. Like I would argue that, like, even if not immediately and directly, he's in charge of his situation the whole damn time, man. Like especially in the later half, right? I think that like if he. Okay, back up even further, right? When he escapes the British military and goes and pretends to be an officer and he's heading into that pub, right? He wouldn't need to escape and become a free man, right? Which was, you could argue, was luck if you look at it in a very short window. But also, like, had he not decided to stop with the Prussians, he used the officer, facade to get past the Prussian army and into wherever he decided freedom was, and then stopped pretending to be an officer and just became a civilian. He doesn't have to fight his way for freedom as a essentially prisoner of war either. He never gets forced into being a spy or to working for the British, right? Like he's in control of that. In very short moments, it's luck or it's being an opportunist, right? But in the big picture, like he never had to put himself there in the first place. Like I'd argue that he's in control the whole time. There's still an element of luck and timeliness in short windows, but I don't know. I just feel like he's completely in charge and just making piss poor decisions. And above all else, right? It may not be my biggest gripe, but overarching above all of that, man, there's never been a shittier fucking person to be a protagonist. Like, what was that? You cut out there. Sorry, for a second. There has never been a shittier person to be a protagonist. Like, the last movie. Man, even still, right? Like, there was some sense of redemption, and like, in the only moments that Barry Lyndon shows like any signs of like, humanity, where he shoots his pistol at the ground and not be a cold-blooded murderer, right? He's doing it so that he doesn't become the pariah, right? And to some extent, he's doing it because I'm holier than thou, right? I'm above you, which is still like ego fucking mania, right? Like I would still argue that like I don't think it's because he's a good person, and it's the closest thing we get to redeeming qualities. There's nothing positive about his character. There's no morality. There's no goodness in him. What a terrible fucking person. I still wow, this is kind of a 180 what I thought you would have actually done, because like when Bullington shoots Barry Lyndon, you're just like, oh, what a shithead. Like, he gives you mercy and you shoot him anyway because it's your turn.
Oh, Bullington's a shithead, dude. His life just got spared and he knows it. And then he's like, nah, let me take my chances again because you dying will give me more satisfaction, right? Like, I'm not saying he's redeeming. I'm not saying that you're not rooting for the stepson, right? Like, he's a shithead too. Don't get me wrong, right? But Barry is literally the shittiest fucking human ever. I hate that he's a protagonist in fucking anything, dude. The worst.
Especially in like a 2.5 hour long freaking movie.
Man, it was just so long. The only like, I think this movie was a positive experience, right? Despite all of the
right.
Like, it was well written, it was well done. I think it was a good movie, even if every part about it is shitty, which is a really weird thing to say. But I guess there's just not a lot of like positives that make it a fun watch. I think it's long and it drags. I don't think there's the comic relief that you get in Spartacus, for example. I think this is a difficult watch. I don't think it's bad.
It is.
I think it's difficult.
It is a difficult watch, and the length doesn't help. That's my biggest gripe about this, is the length. There's a few things that could be trimmed, and also when I was talking about the themes and how I went on like a big huge tangent and hammering down like examples of these themes, we always had like a critique on like how like Kubrick is heavy-handed in like expressing like what he's trying to tell you, like the points that he's trying to make.
Oh, he did that in this one too. The dialogue was so overwritten. You meet the 7-year-old stepson, and he's in the back of a stagecoach with whoever the fuck that guy is that's following the family around. He's like, I don't like him. He's a philanderer. He's gonna cheat on my mom, and I don't like that she's in love with a shithead. He's gonna screw her over. And no 7-year-old has that fucking perspective, dude. It was still heavy-handed.
Well, yeah, I was about to say this movie is heavy-handed, but it's also heavy-handed in different ways, because like it's like, okay, you've made like several points on like these themes that are being made. You could have cut a couple of them out and still, or made them shorter to make the same damn point.
Yeah, and well, and I also think that like, you know what, the first half of the movie was still the longer half, right? I think it was separated into 2 hours and then an hour and a half. But the first 2 hours, there were things happening. There was stuff to fill the time, right? You could have shortened it. There were certainly parts that, like, you know, it didn't need to be, 8 straight minutes. It could have been 30 seconds to give you the gist and move along to drive the plot. But at least that felt full, right? That one didn't feel like it was dragging. The second half of the movie, post-intermission, was just like, okay, they're just talking about nothing, and then they're still talking about nothing, and then they're talking about nothing. Even the duel was like 11 fucking minutes long to fire 3 bullets. It was fucking crazy how much standing still and looking at goddamn nothing you were doing for 11 fucking minutes. It's crazy.
We didn't even get to the point where you said, like, Barry Lyndon should have died at the end.
Look, I get that, like, it's a nice wrap up to realize that he doesn't die and that the family takes over the fortune, and then the family gets to pity him by sending money back to him, like, hey, you're below us now, we're paying you off, right? I get why that's a more complete ending, but also there's kind of no purpose in him living, right? He shows mercy and it becomes his downfall, like, or pity rather than mercy. Like, let pity be the thing that actually kills him instead of just now he deserves the pity, right? Like, don't even put him in that position.
At the end of this movie, I noticed I kind of got like a vibe that it's almost kind of like a story that you would see in like a Western, as in like someone's like in a duel and on the run, and then, gets a reputation of being like a unscrupulous person, but like obviously gets in a situation where he's like at like a high status and then pisses off the wrong person and then dies in the end of a duel. Like, that sounds like a plot of like a Western movie, so you kind of expect him to die at the end of the movie.
I just think, like, the only thing that it does, it brings it full circle at the end that he lives, that, like, well, I guess even though he's still a shitty person, you have to pity him a little bit, right? Like, it brings the whole thing full circle, and I understand. But also, like, why do you even put him in the position where you could possibly have him, like, you know, controlling his own destiny to do something even shittier again, right? Like, just fucking kill him. Put me out of my misery for knowing that someone like this was written into existence. Kill him.
Oh my god, I can't believe you just made a fucking Moonraker quote.
I don't think okay. It wasn't intentional, but
it wasn't completely, no. It was like the line, "I can't wait to put you out of my misery, Mr. Bond."
Oh, I want to be put out of my misery knowing that Barry exists. Yeah, no, fuck that guy. The worst person ever. Like, the worst protagonist. There's never been a worse person as a protagonist. I'll stick to that, dude. He's just fucking awful. All right, I think that needs to wrap us up before I pop a fucking blood vessel.
Yeah.
All right. Rankings. Where do you got it?
All right. I told Ted before that this has been my favorite Kubrick movie since, like, the second time I've watched it, which I'm pretty sure Ted is twitching and having a blood vessel.
No, I get it, but it's hard for me to agree, but I get it.
And it still hasn't gotten away from that position. I do believe that it's flawed and not for everyone, but it's one of those movies that I can watch and unpack, like, different themes and still keep, you know, seeing different themes and different things that are in the movie. Now, granted, that could also be because it's also one of those Kubrick movies that I've seen later in life as opposed to, you know, earlier and seen, you know, to death, such as, like, Full Metal Jacket or The Shining. So to me, I think that does it better than 2001: A Space Odyssey. And although this movie's not as quotable as A Clockwork Orange, I still think I get more out of Barry Lyndon than I do out of Clockwork Orange.
I think this is crazy because it's a better movie, but I think I'm putting it below Lolita. Like, I think the only thing behind this is Spartacus. And the only reason I do that, right, is because, like, again, I think it was a good movie. I think that, like, it was worth the watch exactly once, but it was difficult, and I can't give you a whole lot of positives. Like, just about everything on my list is negative. That like, hey, I hate the characters. I hate the way that it was written. I hate the you know, lack of symmetry. I hate, like, there's just so much that's dislikable about this movie that it's hard for me to give it credit as being positive. I still believe that it's worth the watch, right? Like, go watch it once. Be prepared to, you know, feel like you've aged 15 years, but go watch it once.
Well, I mean, my hair is gray now, so.
But yeah, I like, go watch it once, but I don't have a whole lot positive for it, so it's got to be low for me.
I mean, I really get where you're putting it at, although I think it's I think below Lolita's a little bit low, but I get.
Look, Lolita at least was a more positive watching experience for me. Like, it was awful. Don't get me wrong. It was a worse movie, and I know it, but I had more positives for that one than for this one. It was a less miserable experience. All right. With that, we're gonna wrap this one up. Been goddamn near an hour. Jesus fucking Christ. As always, you can watch the movies with us on Tuesdays in the Discord. The link will be in the description. If you enjoyed us as people, you can also check out our streams. Stallman at Traductus and myself at Ted Green Eagles. The next week is The Shining, so come watch that, or well, come see the podcast, because by the time the podcast come out, we're already gonna have seen them. You know how this fucking works. We've done this enough times.
We might be up doing, like, the horror films by then, right?
We will definitely be doing horror films by then. So, but we'll still be watching movies in the Discord.
Which we will make the announcement of what we're watching in the next one. Although you figure we would have done this earlier when we would have known that, you know, we would have actually started watching those horror films, but we're like, no, The Shining's a horror film. Let's announce it then.
Sure, fuck it. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you here next week.